Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to this Lazy Programmer's tutorial on creating a flexible and modular interaction system. Interaction systems are an incredibly important aspect of games, and I'd wager there aren't that many games that could function properly without some form of interaction system. From opening doors and chests, to picking up items off the ground, to paying respects. There are very few games where interaction systems aren't required. It's equally important that these interaction systems also be incredibly modular, often being able to achieve multiple different results all from a single button press. So for today, I'll be showing you how we can create a very simple yet incredibly modular interaction system such as those we see in games. And much of the logic revolves around interfaces. The best way I can explain interfaces is that they function similar to a contract. Any script that agrees to the contract must also have specific abilities that are seen in the contract. The actual logic or functions of these abilities can vary depending on the script, but the actual signature of the ability must be there. If you want a more detailed explanation, or if you want to explore more possibilities of interfaces, I highly recommend you go and check out Unity Learn's short course on interfaces. But with all of this out of the way, I'll now show you how we can utilize the power of interfaces to create an incredibly flexible and modular interaction system. Okay, and here we are in the project. I've just gone ahead and created a very basic template project including a level and a very simple first-person player controller, including movement and looking, and we'll be building off of this and creating a very simple modular interaction system. So to get us started, we're going to need to create the actual interface that all interactables are going to be inheriting from. So in our scripts folder, located here, we'll just create a nice little subfolder for any interface or interfaces that we might need in the future. And we're going to go ahead and create a monobehavior script, and we're simply going to title this iInteractable. Cool, with our interactable interface created, let's open it up and go ahead and delete all of this, as well as delete this. We won't be inheriting from monobehavior, nor is this going to be a class. This will instead be an interface. And now that we've created an interface, we'll just need to go ahead and create the common method that's going to be called anytime the player interacts with an object that inherits from this interface. And so we're just going to name this method interact. And that's it. That's all we have to do in terms of creating the actual interactable interface. Cool. With that out of the way, we now need to go ahead and write the actual logic for the player pressing the interact key and then sending out a raycast and then having whatever is hit by that raycast, if it's interactable, have the little interaction thing happen. So let's go ahead and create a simple script, and we'll call this player interactor. Wait for the engine to compile. Once that's done, let's go ahead and delete the start and update method. And up here, we're going to make sure that we are using Unity engine.input system. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to write the interaction key logic. So public void player interact input action dot callback context. Let me just consult my notes. Here we are. So within the player interact function, we're now going to start writing the logic that sends out a raycast, checks if whatever it hits is an interactable, and then call interact on that object. So to do that, we'll first check if the button is being pressed. Then we're going to go raycast hit, hit, and I've forgotten, but we need to actually define some parameters for the interaction. Can't believe I forgot that. So we're just going to go ahead and write header interaction settings. And first off, we're going to need a layer mask interaction layers. This is so that we don't constantly have our raycasts interrupted by objects that might not necessarily be interactable. That way we can only check for objects that are or that aren't marked as interactable by their layer. Then we're going to create a transform interaction origin. This interaction origin is going to serve as the point from which we send out the raycast for the interaction. Then we're going to create a float interaction range. This is necessary to define the maximum distance from which we can interact objects with. And lastly, we'll just go input action interact. Cool, now that we have those parameters defined, let's go ahead and continue writing the player interaction logic. So, after we've pressed the button, we're going to create a raycast hit variable, and we're going to start writing the logic for the raycast. So we'll go physics.raycast, and then we'll go interaction origin as the interaction origin.position as its origin. We'll go interaction origin.transform.forward. Because we want to send the raycast out from the camera or from the direction that we're looking, so we'll want it to go in the forward direction of where we're looking. We're going to print out the hit information. We want to limit this raycast to our interaction range, and we only want this ray to be hitting objects that are part of interaction layers. Cool. So now we're going to go if whatever we hit, collider.tryGetComponent, and if whatever we hit has this interface, i.e. iInteractable target, then we'll want to call the interact method on that target. And that is as simple as it needs to be. It is really that simple to just write it. Remember, we're not defining either in the interface or within the player interactor what interact does. All we're simply doing is that when we press our interact button, we send out a raycast, and if it hits an object that has this interactable interface, we call the interact function, but what that function actually does can vary depending on the object, which makes it incredibly modular and easy to set up a variety of different interactions. So let's go ahead and hook everything up. Wait for it to recompile. So we're going to go to the player script. We're going to attach the player interactor component here. We need to create some layers, so we'll go add layer, interactable. You don't have to do the layer system, I just do it for the sake of cleanliness and to avoid future headaches. Interactable. Our interaction origin is going to be our camera, and let's set our interaction range at, let's say 10 for now. It's a bit much, I think like 7 should be fine. Awesome, now let's just hook up the actual button press to the player input. So we'll go events, player. Yes, I forgot to actually add the interact button to our action map. So let's go and do that quickly. In our action maps, we'll go add a new action, call it interact. It'll be of type button. Why is it so small? There we go. We'll go binding. And typically it's E, but for the meme I want the interact key to be F. So we'll go F, set that as the interaction key, wait for it to recompile. And then once it's done recompiling, we go back to the player input component, events, player. We now see the interact function. Let's drag our player in here, player interactor, and you'll see the player interact function in its own little section here. So we just do that. Awesome. So now we have essentially the core functionality of the interaction system done. The last thing we'll need is just an actual little interactable. So let's go ahead and create a simple little cube. We'll call this test cube. Let's give it a nice little material, test mat. Let's make it, I don't know, orange, smoothness 0. Let's make it a bit brighter. Perfect. Here you go. And then let's just reset its transform and move it out a bit. And then very importantly, let's make sure that its collider is up and that it's set to the interactable layer. Let's just make sure it's not clipping into the ground, preferably. And so now we need to actually attach an interactable script to the test cube. So let's go ahead and create another folder, and we'll call this interaction scripts. And then let's go ahead and create the actual script. Let's just call this test cube interaction logic or script. Test cube interaction script. We wait for it to recompile. Cool. Now when we're in, first we're going to delete the update and start method as usual. And in order to inherit from this interface, alongside the mono behavior, because we're by default all scripts inherit from mono behavior, we're also going to inherit, as you can see at the top of the order list here, we're going to inherit from interactable. So let's hit tab, and you'll notice we get an error. Don't worry, this is fine. If we go and check the errors, it'll say implement missing members. So we click that. Boom, there's the interact. So the reason it was giving us an error earlier is because if we're inheriting from interactable, then we need a method or function in the script somewhere named interact. This is the same as any other interface where it's declaring its own signature methods. Any script that inherits from this interface will need to also have these methods in place. So, for the sake of testing, we'll just go and debug.log. Hey, you interacted with me. And so that's pretty much it. So now if we go ahead, close this, and we go and attach this component, whenever we interact with this cube now, we should actually be seeing our log fill up with those debug logs. So we walk up and press F. Hey, you interacted with me, and I can span this as many times as I want. I can walk away, and as you can see, I'm looking at the cube, but I can't interact with it. Walk up to it, pressing F, and it prints out. And that is really as simple as it needs to be to write a modular interaction system. You can input any code or logic in here that you want, and it will execute each time you are within interaction range and you press the interact key. And that brings us to the end of this Lazy Programmers tutorial for modular interaction systems. I hope you learned some valuable info from this. Now go on, get out of here, and make some games.